this just doesn't feel very comfortable to me. Hey everyone, back with another video, and this time it will be another entry in the Soapbox series, but another soft one. I don't want to be dogmatic about it, but it is a topic that came up recently in the comments again, and is also something that I frequently see when teaching inside my own club or when doing lessons outside of it, like supporting Ulrich or doing some myself. Quick note, I am still feeling the effects of a rather mean cold that we caught in Vienna at the Rhein event, so I hope I get through this without coughing, but if you see a lot of jump cuts or if I just talk weirdly for a second there, then that's that basically, but I'll try to do my best. So the topic I want to talk about is 2 of the 4 hängen and one specific technique, that is the left Eber, left Stier to a degree as well, and the gewendte Hand. And those are techniques that I regularly find people that are new to our club, or just when we teach techniques related to it outside of our club, struggle with, particularly, as I said, people new to Messe. And maybe just as a quick side note, if you don't know what I'm talking about, Eber and Stier are 2 of the hängen, and that means basically that while you can't really see my lower body, so I'm just going to do the hand position, but the right Eber is basically hand on the hip, long edge down, nagel to the outside, whereas the left Eber is long edge up and nagel again to the outside. And it's the same with the Stier, right? Nagel on the inside, edge or flat up, depending on how you want to do it for the right Stier. And then again, it's either flat up or edge up for the left Stier. And then you have gewendte Hand, which is a technique where you make contact with your opponent's blade with the short edge, not the long edge. So not this kind of contact here, but contact here. And what I often see people do when they get introduced to it is they struggle with actually either for Eber bringing the edge up and keeping the hand low, or with for gewendte Hand or Stier to a degree, bringing the hand forward and the short edge towards your opponent's blade. Because what I see them doing is, mostly because they're still new, keeping a rather closed hand, like what sometimes is called a hammer fist, even though no one I really know who needs to use a hammer regularly and professionally really does hold it like that, but rather firm grip. And then they try to achieve the position of edge up or short edge to the opponent's blade by severely turning in their wrist. And that is a position that is not very comfortable. It kind of pulls it all back by necessity. It's kind of hard to bring your arm forward if you try to turn your wrist in. It's also kind of hard to bring your arm down, really, if you want to do it by turning your wrist. That's just a natural stop. We can't fold it, or most of us at least, fold it all the way down, right? It's like that exercise you do with the thumb. Most people can't touch their thumb to their arm, and there's a reason for that, and it's not necessarily always a good sign if you are able to do it, really. And what I always try to tell people, and what I thought might be easier to show really than rather just try to write it all out in the comments or in a post or anything, is don't necessarily turn your wrist, turn your Messer or sword, really. If you're doing arming sword, then same rules apply. So, of course, Eber on the right side, very easy to achieve. And for the left side, then what I don't do is try to move over and turn my wrist, because I immediately feel that in my arm. And it's really rather uncomfortable. It's not a position that is very stable when it comes to resisting pressure. Now, if you're just standing in Eber and standing in it as a Hut and just, standing back, then that's nothing that you really necessarily need to do. But for gewendte Hand, you do need contact. And while it's not a position that you just sit in for a very long time, it is a position where, at least to a degree, you either need to resist pressure or be able to at least be comfortable enough to feel what your opponent is doing, the whole Indes and Fühlen thing, right? So what I do when I do it is I turn the Messer. I get into the position like this. And it's the same when moving in Stier from one side to the other. I have a more open hand and I am able to turn the Messer comfortably, also for gewendte Hand, because I have an open hand and I turn the Messer. If I'm just holding the Messer, like neutrally, like I've been doing now for a long time, it looks like this. And when I'm in gewendte Hand or Eber, it basically looks like this. And that means that in this position, like gewendte Hand is the most extreme one really, it means my wrist is straight. It's a much more comfortable position. It's basically an extension of my arm, and I can stand in this position for a very long time. And I can resist a good amount of pressure in this position, even though you might not necessarily think I would be able to do that just seeing it. But I'm able to resist a good amount of pressure doing this. And I'm able to also, because I'm quite comfortable in it, feel what my partner or opponent is doing and then react if I need to put more pressure into it for more resistance, or, cut to the other side, or, mutate into a lower position because I feel that they're kind of weak about it. All these things I can do because I don't turn my wrist, I turn the Messer. And that's also one of the reasons why I, for my part, am always quite insistent that clamshell gloves aren't necessarily the best choice for Messer fencing, because I see hand mobility, being able to switch grips from, a very firm grip, which you do need sometimes, to a more loose grip, to a grip where you have your thumb on the back of the grip, to the flat of the blade, turning the Messer in the hand for Eber, Stier or gewendte Hand. I find these switching the grips very important. It's a very essential skill of Messer fencing to me. You can get away with not being able to do it as much in longsword, because there you have a second hand to basically do the manipulation, the manipulation of the sword for you with the second hand. You don't need to rely on just one hand, what you do in Messer. But for Messer fencing, because we only have one hand, it is very essential. And I find if you have a glove that is very stiff and keeps your fingers together, then you can't really do that as much. And you're basically cutting out a whole skill out of Messer fencing that you can't do then. You can still fence with a Messer, but I would argue it is not necessarily what the sources want us to do, because when you look in Le Küchner, for example, I would say, to me at least, these very much read like a more open hand and a more straight wrist. Now, as I said in the beginning, I don't want to be dogmatic about this. There is lots of room for reading and interpretation, and what works for you works for you. That's fine. And it's not like we don't see crooked wrists in the sources. If you look at Thalhofer, for example, there, if you look in the Messer part, there you do see a wrist that is more crooked. Whereas then in the part of mounted fencing, there you do see a position for the gewendte Hand that I read very much as a position like I do it, where it's rather a turned sword in the hand than a turned hand. But even if you look at the position where the wrist is more bent, if you look at the fingers closely, if you really keep a tight hand, the edge of your sword, Messer, aligns with the knuckles here. And it's really hard to then turn it around because you can't get your knuckles all the way. But even if you turn the wrist more, if you open up your hand and more align the edge with your second row of finger bones here, then even if you turn and crook your wrist, you have a much more open hand position and you're able to turn the blade much further. And you can see it in the picture that the index finger is basically not really engaged with the blade at all. So it's more turned to the side. So even in that picture where the wrist is crooked, it's a much more open hand really than what I see many people do in the beginning, especially where it's just trying to keep the hand closed and turn it all the way. So if the left Stier, or particularly the left Eber, is a position that you struggle with, if you struggle with the gewendte Hand, then maybe look at the position of your wrist. Look at how the Messer is sitting in your hand. And if you see that you rely on turning your wrist a lot, try to turn the Messer in your hand. It will feel difficult if you haven't done it, if you're not used to it in the beginning. But the flexibility of switching your grip around will help you a lot in Messer fencing. It certainly helped me. So that's all for today. That's just something that I wanted to show and talk about, and I hope it was of interest. If you find it helps you, do let me know. If you have a different experience, especially let me know, and let's talk about it. Cheers.